Find the possible formula for a polynomial f that has degree 2 or less with f of negative 1 equals to 0 and f of 3 equals to 0 and f of 2 equals to 6. For this question, you need to know the factor theorem, which says that if f of n is equal to 0, then f of x has the factor, has x minus that number as a factor. Now let's see how this thing applies to our case. First, we know that f of negative 1 is 0, so that means x minus negative 1 is a factor. Now what does that mean? Well, that means that the function f of x is equal to, by the way, this is equal to x plus 1, right? Okay. So f of x is x plus 1 times something. That's what it means. Because being a factor means it makes up part of the product that is equal to the whole thing. Now let's do the same thing for the next one. F of 3 equals to 0. Now what does that mean? Well, again, if f of 3 is 0, then x minus 3 is a factor. So we know that x minus 3 is a factor. And that means that f of x is equal to x minus 3 times something. Well, now that we know one factor and another factor, putting these two information together says that f of x is equal to x plus 1 times x minus 3 times something. Now, let's think about what this something could be. If it has x in there, then that's no good, because x times x will give you a cubic polynomial, and x squared or anything that is of higher power, when you expand this out, it's going to give you a polynomial that's higher than degree 2. So the only way that this could be a degree 2 is when this is not an x, but some constant a, right? So we're going to rewrite this as a times x plus 1 times x minus 3. That's the only function that would be degree 2 and have factors of x plus 1 and x minus 3. Now that still leaves us with a that we don't know, and that's why we need the next information, which says f of 2 is 6. So f of 2 is 6. But then, according to this, what is f of 2? According to this, if I replace this x by 2, then that's going to be equals to 3 times negative 1. That's negative 3a, right? So, because f of 2 is negative 3a and also it's equal to 6, the only way this could happen is when negative 3a and 6 are equal. And we can solve this by dividing both sides by negative 3, so that a is equal to 6 divided by negative 3, and that's equals to negative 2. Okay, and therefore the final answer is that the polynomial f that has degree 2 must be this polynomial with a being replaced by negative 2. So this is a perfectly fine answer. However, if the question asks for quadratic polynomial in standard form, so what's the standard form? Standard form is like a case when you have f of x equals to ax squared plus bx plus c. That's what the standard form is. And to put this into a standard form, you have to expand things out. So you would write down f of x equals to negative 2 times, and we'll have to FOIL it. X times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. 1 times x will be plus x. 1 times negative 3 will be negative 3. And therefore, this is going to be negative 2 times x squared minus 2x minus 3, where I combine these two like terms. X and then minus 3x would be combined to negative 2x. And then finally, you multiply by negative 2, and it's going to give you the standard form. Negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 6. Next question. Find the formula for the quadratic function whose graph has its vertex at 1, 8 and its y-intercept at y equals to negative 4. Okay, so for this one, you need to know the vertex form of quadratic function. And that's f of x equals to a times x minus h squared plus k. That's the vertex form. Now let's try to see what this means. Well, in this vertex form, this h comma k is the vertex. So in order to use this formula to our situation, first we are given that 1, 8 is the vertex. So instead of h we have 1, and instead of k we have 8. So we put 1 here and 8 here. So that's the vertex, right? So this is our vertex form. The vertex form applied to this 1, 8 is the vertex will give you this as the vertex form. But we still don't know what a is, so we need to use this extra information given to us, which is that y-intercept is y equals to negative 4. So y-intercept at x equals to negative 4 means that the graph passes 0, negative 4, because 0, negative 4 is on the y-axis, and that's the place where the graph passes. So this should be y. Okay. So 0, negative 4 is the y-axis. It's on the y-axis, and because we know that 0, negative 4 is on this graph, what we need to do is we need to take that equation, y equals to a times x minus 1 plus 8, x minus 1 squared plus 8, and replace x by 0 and y by negative 4. And now we still have to solve this, and then we solve it by saying that negative 4 equals to a plus 8, which means a is equal to negative 12. Similar question, find the value of k so that the graph y equals to x plus 5 squared plus k passes through the point 0, negative 11. Well, we know that this graph passes through 0, negative 11, so x is 0 and y is negative 11. So that tells us that negative 11 is equals to 25 plus k, and by subtracting 25 both sides, k is equal to negative 11 minus 25, which is negative 36. Okay, number 30, put the function y equals to x plus 6 squared over 3 minus 7 in vertex form, and determine the values of a, h, and k. So what you want to do is you want to be able to compare this and this one and figure out what the value of a and h and k could be. Now, there's a big difference between the way these two things are written here. A is multiplied whereas 3 is divided. Right? So the first thing you have to do in order to make these two look similar is to rewrite this division by 3 as multiplication by 1/3. See, 1/3 times x plus 6 is same thing as dividing x plus 6 squared by 3. So multiplication by 1/3 is same as dividing by 3. Once you do that, then you can easily see that 1/3 is A, -7 is K, and, well, it's plus 6, whereas this is minus 6. So some of you already see that -6 would make this work, but if that's not clear to you, you can also rewrite this one more time and rewrite it as minus of -6. And if you do that, then you can now see the correspondence that A is 1/3, H is -6, and K is oh, this should also be plus -7. Yeah, so if you write it like that, then K is -7, H is -6, and A is 1/3. Okay? Question 31. Find the formula for the parabola through the points 4, 5 and 7, 9, whose graph is given below. 4, 5 is the vertex. Now, see, because 4, 5 is the vertex, when the vertex is given, it's good to use the vertex form of the quadratic equation, which is a times x minus h squared plus k. And since h comma k is our vertex, which is 4, 5, we can set h as 4 and k as 5 so that we can rewrite this in the form of h as 4, k as 5. Now let's look at what a should be. Well, the only other information that we know about this function is that it has to pass through 7, 9. So for this graph to pass through 7, 9, it means that when you take this equation and plug in the x value as 7 and the y value as 9, the equation should be satisfied. And that one gives you 9 minus 5 equals to 8 times 9. Because 7 minus 4 is 3, 3 squared is 9. Subtracting 5 both sides, you get 4. And therefore you get 4 equals to 9a. And that gives us that a is equal to 4 over 9 by dividing both sides by 9. Now it will be a terrible mistake to stop here, because the question is to find the formula for the parabola. The formula for the parabola is this one, right? So you want to replace this a by 4 over 9. Okay. An empty champagne bottle is tossed from a hot air balloon. Its upward velocity is measured every second and recorded in the table below. So apparently what happened is that the velocity originally is upwards of 38 feet per second, and 1 second later is 6 feet per second, and then after 2 seconds it's negative, which means now the bottle is falling down. So initially the ball is thrown up and then it's falling down. Okay, let's look at some pattern of these numbers. Well, 38 to 6, it dropped by 32, right? And then, so 38 minus 32 is equal to 6. And then if you do 6 minus 32, you get negative 26. So you can, if you look at the differences, you can see that every one of these decline by 32. It goes down by 32. So that would be a nice way to look at this. Another way to think about it is to you might want to draw this thing, see what happens if it's if time is here, and then this is the velocity. At time t equal to 0, you have 38, and then time t equals to 1 is 6, and then you have negative 26, and then negative 58. And because this is dropping with a constant rate, the graph of the velocity will become a straight line. Okay, let me draw the graph in red. So this will be a straight line. So it's going to be a straight line passing through all these points. And that kind of tells you that what you need is the line equation. So you need the line equation with y equals to mx plus b. That's the line equation, right? With the coordinates it should pass is 0, 38, 1, 6, 2, negative 26, and then so and so on. Okay, how do you get the m? M is given by change of y over change of x, right? And change of y is, let's just look at the change of y between these 2 points. So y value became 38, and then it became 6. So 38 to 6, there's a drop of negative 32, right? You can write this as a terminal minus initial. When you look at the change of any value, you always look at the final value minus the initial value, right? That's how you look at the change, final value minus initial value. And change in x is final value is 1, initial value is 0, so this will be 1 minus 0. And that gives you negative 32. That's the slope. Alright, so we're going to plug that in here and claim that y is equal to negative 32x plus b. Now, to figure out b, just pick one of the points and plug it in to see what you get. I guess the easiest one is to plug in this one. So to plug this into here, you're saying that x is 0 and y is 38. So you're going to say y is 38 and negative 32, x is 0 plus b, and therefore that's going to say b is equal to 38. Find the linear function with values f of negative 4 equals to 8 and f of 4 equals to 5. Linear function means f of x is equals to mx plus b. Okay? It means it's the order 1 polynomial, which means that the graph is a line. That's why it's called a linear function. And therefore we can compute it by thinking about the m and b, just like the previous question. But before we do that, we have to convert this into coordinates. So since x equals to negative 4 is plugged in and the output y is 8, it means that the graph passes through negative 4, 8. And also, if you plug in 4 and you get 5, then the graph passes through 4, 5. So now we can figure out the slope m. M is change of y over change of x. And change of anything is terminal minus initial. So final value is 5, initial value is 8. So final minus initial. Final value of x is 4, initial value is negative 4. So final minus initial, and that gives you negative 3 over 8. So that's your slope. Okay, so that means we have y equals to negative 3 over 8x plus b, but we still need to figure out b. How do we figure out b? Well, you just plug in anything. Now you're free to plug in this one or that this other one, 4, 5. I guess positive numbers are less stressful. So let's take x as 4 and y as 5. So that gives you y is replaced by 5, then negative 3 over 8, and x is replaced by 4 plus b. Let's see, what is this thing? Negative. Okay, negative 3 over 8 times 4 is when you multiply a number to a fraction, it only gets multiplied to the top. And once you do that, you see the top and bottom are both divisible by 4, so that's negative 3 over 2. Right? If you divide 12 by 4, it's 3. 8 by 4 is 2. So that's negative 3 over 2 is this value here. So you're going to get 5 equals to negative 3 over 2 plus b. And that's going to say b is equal to 5 plus 3 over 2, which is 10 over 2 plus 3 over 2, which is 13 over 2. Okay, so b is 13 over 2, and now we have the m, we have the b, therefore we can write down the function, which is negative 3 over 8 plus 12 over 13 over 2. So that's the answer. For this function, compute and simplify f of x plus h minus f of x over h. And really the challenge for this question is to figure out what the heck is this f of x plus h. If you've never seen this, it's going to be very unnerving trying to figure out what this is. I mean, I see a lot of students coming up with very creative ideas of what this means, but most of the creative ones in math are usually wrong. So unfortunately, you will have to really focus on what I'm trying to say here. So what do I mean by, so first question is, what do I mean by, or what do you mean by f of x plus h? Well, the answer is it's x plus h plugged into the x in the function f of x. That's what it means. But this is not so trivial, so you must do it in 2 steps. So how to compute f of x plus h. And by the way, of course, you don't have to write this into your solution. Maybe I just put here, solution here. But when you try to solve this, you should always try to do this one separately, okay? Don't do everything at once, just do this one separately. And I want you to do this in 2 steps. So step 1, copy the definition of f of x, but vacate all x as blanks with nothing in there, okay? So just copy this thing, and instead of x you put a parenthesis, instead of this x you put a parenthesis, instead of this x you put a parenthesis. That's step 1. And step 2, into the blank, into every blank, write in x plus h. Alright, so you must remember these 2 steps and work accordingly. If you don't follow this, it's likely you're going to get it wrong. So step 2 says put in x plus h for this one, put in x plus h for this one, put in x plus h for this one. Okay. Right. Now you have this Now let's simplify. Well, what is this thing? Well, negative x plus h squared means it's x plus h times x plus h. And if 4 is multiplied to this, you can distribute the 4 to each one of them, so you get 4x plus 4h. Now hopefully you don't have to do it this way. You just remember that a plus b squared is a squared plus b squared, and then there's the double the product. So if you know this, you'll right away write down x squared plus something plus h squared, and then in the middle there's the twice the product of the two. So x times h is the product, and you multiply it by 2. So if you can do this, that's awesome. Hopefully you can. Let's say you forgot or you're not sure. Then in that case, you'll have to do the long and arduous task of multiplying this out by FOIL. So x times x is going to be equal to x squared. So let's see, it's going to be x squared, and then x times h plus h times x plus h squared. Okay, and then you distribute the minus sign, so it's going to be equals to negative x squared. Oh, by the way, these are like terms, right? So let's combine it to 2xh. Again, hopefully you don't have to do it like this. You can just use the a plus b squared formula, a squared plus b squared, and 2xh, 2ab, and get this one right away without having to go through these two steps. But you know, you should always have a backup plan. Sometimes you forget, so this will be the longer way. Don't just rely on one method though. Always try to have a backup plan, because our memories are not perfect. Sometimes we forget. Alright, so this is what we have for f of x plus h. Okay, since we know that, we're now ready to compute this. Therefore, this is going to be equal to this thing that we simplified, right? So it's going to be this thing. Okay. And then minus the original function. Minus the original function, which is, where is it? It's this one. Okay, so it's this one. And then you divide it by h. Alright, it's very important to have this second one wrapped around with the parentheses, because if you don't, you're going to make a sign mistake. Because there's a minus, you can distribute this minus, and distributing the minus is going to give you what? Let me see. It's going to be plus x squared minus 4x plus 9. And you can basically see that negative x squared plus x squared cancel, 4x and minus 4x cancel, negative 9 and 9 cancel. So if you handle all these cases when you have cancellations, this is gone with this guy. This is gone with this guy. And minus 9 plus 9, they're gone too. And then you see that the top can be factored by h, right? So we can factor the top by h. If you factor out the h out h, the h's are taken away. So there are two h's here, so one of the h is gone. This h is gone, and I just write it once for all at the end. And then you're dividing by h. And since it's multiplication by h and then division by h, those two cancel, which just leaves you with equal to this. Alright. 35 f of x is x cubed minus 19x minus 30 and satisfies f of negative 2 equals to 0 factor f of x. So again, the factor theorem is true here. Factor theorem. If f of negative 2 equals to 0, then x minus negative 2 is a factor. That's what factor theorem means in this context. And since x minus negative 2 is x plus 2, we know that the given polynomial here is equal to x plus 2 times some second order polynomial. Okay. Now, how do we figure out that other polynomial? Well, for that one, we will need to use a long division. So let's just do the long division. So the long division is, you write down x cubed minus 19x minus 30. And if you just write it like this, you're going to make a mistake. See, there should be an x squared term, but you don't see one. So you have to write down 0x squared. Forgetting this term is going to mess up your columns, and you'll likely get it wrong. Okay, so make sure if you don't see an x squared term, put 0x squared. If you don't see an x term, in that case you put 0x. Okay, and then we're trying to divide by x plus 2, so let's try to divide by x plus 2. And x times what is x cubed? X squared is x cubed, right? X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times 2 is 2x. And as I just explained, this top is always something that, when multiplied to the leading term, it would match with the very first leading term. Okay, x squared times x is x cubed. So these two now match, and that's why we picked x squared. Okay. So once you multiply the leading term matches, you subtract so that leading term now is 0, and then 0 minus 2 is negative 2x squared. Sorry. And then the other ones are you're not subtracting anything, so they go down unchanged. Okay, now the next question is x times what gives you negative 2x squared? And the answer is negative 2x. Negative 2x times x is negative 2x squared. Negative 2x times 2 is negative 4x. Subtract, and you get negative 15x minus 30. And then finally you put negative 15, so that negative 15 times x is negative 15x, but 2 times negative 15 is negative 30, so when you subtract you get 0. And this means when you divide x cubed minus 19x minus 30, when you divide this by x plus 2, it's going to give you x squared minus 2x minus 15. And therefore, x cubed minus 19x minus 30, if you multiply x plus 2 to the other side, you get x plus 2 equals to x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay, however, this is not done yet because this part could be factorable as well. So let's think about two numbers that multiply to AC is negative 15. The middle one is negative 2. What are two numbers that multiply to negative 15 and add up to negative 2? Those are negative 5 and positive 3, right? They add up to negative 2, multiplies to negative 15. Now, if this had some coefficient here that's other than 1, then it's a lot harder. You have to split this middle term and do factor by grouping and all that. However, since here the leading term is only x squared, you don't have to do any more work. Just just see that it's x minus 5 and x plus 3. So this thing factors as x minus 5, x plus 3. Find the end behavior and zeros of x cubed minus 19x minus 30. Sketch the graph of f of x. Okay. So, oh, I forgot to write this here. See, let me erase this. See, x plus 2 comes unchanged, and this one is x minus 5, x plus 3. Okay, so this next question uses this fact that this polynomial here is equal to x plus 2, x minus 5, x plus 3. Because if you want to find the x-intercept is obtained by setting this the function equal to 0, right? And you get x plus 2 equals to 0, which gives you x equals to negative 2. X minus 5 equal to 0, which gives you x equals to 5. X plus 3 equal to 0, which gives you x equals to negative 3. And therefore you get negative 2, 5, and negative 3 as your x-intercepts. On the other hand, you get negative 30 as your y-intercept, because if you plug in 0 into x, you get negative 30. So this is your y-intercept. So let's say this is negative 30. This is negative 2. Figure not drawing to scale. So anyways, you're going to have these 4 points as points on the graph. Now hopefully you remember that when x cubed has a positive coefficient, right now it's 1, so it's positive, then the shape of a cubic curve looks like this or this, right? Like that. So it's curved that way, and the only way that this kind of graph can pass through this is when you have something like this. Okay, so that's the graph. Now what's the end behavior? You see this, so the end behavior would be this one and that one. Okay, which of the following will have end behavior of going this way and that way? Okay, so see, in our previous case, this one is when you had x cubed with the positive coefficient, right? Positive 1 as the coefficient. So you see, if it's an odd exponent as the highest order and the coefficient is positive, it's going to be this. But if you have a negative x cubed in the beginning, then this will be upside down, so it's going to be like this, right? So this will be the end behavior. So since this is the kind of end behavior that we're looking for, and it's really odd with the minus, we will look at the odd one with the minus. So see here, x to the 9th, that's an odd with the minus, so this should be the answer. On the other hand, this one will be even with the positive, so in that case, the end behavior will be like this. Even with the negative, in that case, the end behavior will be like this. If it's odd with positive, then the end behavior will be the same as this one that we just did, okay? All right, use the table below to find f of g of 11, f of negative 4, g of negative 2, and g of f equals to 10. All right, so let's try to track down these values. First of all, you have to know what this small circle means. This small circle here means one function is plugged into the other. So this one, before you do anything, you have to know the meaning of what this is. It means f of g of 11. Okay? Do not try to solve this question without first rewriting it this form. This is the most important step. Now once you have fg11 as the f of g of 11, then it's kind of easy. What is g of 11? G of 11, when x is 11, g is 13, right? So this thing here, it says g of 11 equals to 13. And that means this is f of 13 because g of 11 is same as 13. And now let's look at 13 and f. And this means that f of 13 is equal to -8. So this would be the answer to this first question would be -8. Okay, let's proceed to do something similar. This again should be written as f of -4. What is f of -4? X is -4 and f is, when x is -4, f of -4 is 11. So you end up with f of 11. And f of 11 is -4. So you get that as the answer. Okay. How about g of -2? Well, that's g of -2. G of -2 is 10. So this is going to be g of 10. And g of 10 is 7, so that's going to be 7. Okay, lastly, g of f of 10 is going to be g of f of 10. And you can read from here that f of 10 is 13. So g of 13. G of 13 is -2. So those are the answers. -8, -4, 7. So the answers are -8, -4, 7, and -2. Transform the table below given that g of x is equal to -4, f of -3x plus 5. Okay, so let's see how this thing works. So let's write down this one here and see how we can use it. So here it says f of -6 is 5, right? When x is -6, f is 5. Okay. Now, what you want to do is then what should I plug in this x right here? So let me copy this and continue on. So if I know that f of -6 is 5, how can we make use of it? In other words, what should I put into this x here so that this one here, this much is going to be f of -6, right? And that if it's f of -6, then you can replace it by 5, right? And the answer is, well, 2 times -3 gives you -6. So if we take this equation and let x equals to 2, then this thing just becomes g of 2 equals to -4 f of -3 times 2 plus 5, and g of 2 is equal to -4 times f of -6 plus 5, and f of -6, we have it as 5, right? So it's going to be -4 times 5 plus 5, that's -20, plus 5, which is -15. Okay, so that's what we just figured out. We figured out that when x is 2, g of 2 is negative 15. And if you notice, we got this information from this information, right? So that's what this question is asking you to. That's what this question is asking you to do. You use the above information to get another information here, okay? All right, so let's do the same thing for the next one. See, g of x is negative 4f of negative 3x plus 5. And I know from here that f of 33 is equal to negative 14. So what should I plug into x so that I get f of negative 33? Let me try to ask that question again. What should I plug in here so that negative 3 times whatever that is going to give me 33? Because then I have f of 33, which now can be used to get a new relationship for g of x. Okay? And the answer is, well, negative 11. Negative 11. Well, first of all, to make it positive, it must be a negative value. And 3 times 11 is indeed 33, so negative 11 is what we need. So we have x equals to negative 11. Plug into each one of these x's, and that gives you g of negative 11 equals to negative 4 times f of negative 33, positive 33, plus 5, and f of 33 is going to be f of 33, let me rewrite this. F of 33 is negative 14 as it says here, so it's negative 4 times negative 14 plus 5, which is 56 plus 5, which is equal to 61. So 61 is what you get, and here the value is negative 11. Okay. Now at some point you see some kind of a pattern. How did we get 2 from negative 6? Well, we're setting this equals to negative 6, right? So if you see that kind of a pattern, then we can do the other questions in a similar fashion. So if I have f of negative 21, let me choose a different color. If I have f of negative 21 equals to negative 8, and I want f of negative 3x to be using this fact, so that negative 3x has to equals to negative 21, then x would be negative 21 over negative 3, which is positive 7. So what I do is I take that equation g of x equals to negative 4 f of negative 3x plus 5, plug in x equals to 7 that we just figured out, so that g of 7 is equal to negative 4 times f of negative 3 times 7 is negative 21 plus 5. And because f of negative 21, according to this table, is negative 8, so negative 4 times negative 8 plus 5, that's, if you multiply negative 4 with negative 8, that's positive 32. 32 plus 5 is 37. And we see that when x is 7, when we plugged in 7, g of 7 is equal to 37. So that's what we get. Okay, same idea here. Last one. Let's try this. See, I want 15 to equals to negative 3x, so x is equal to 15 over negative 3. Where this negative 3x came from here. Okay, so if this changes, then you have to change that again. Okay, it's not always negative 3x. Sometimes it could be like x plus 1 or negative 2x plus 1, whatever that is. You set equals to this number. That's what you have to do. Okay, so it's going to be negative 5. And when you plug in negative 5 into this equation, you end up with g of negative 5 equals to negative 4 times f of positive 15 plus 5, and f of 15 is negative 11, so it's negative 4 times negative 11 plus 5, and that's positive 44 plus 5, which is 49. So I get 49 if you plug in negative 5. That's the answer.